Foster parents, what's the nastiest comment you've heard about your kid? Our 10-year-old Diana was in the kitchen, princess twirling in her new dress, pumped about my sister's engagement party tomorrow. We'd taken her in 5 months ago, so she was still in the trying to prove herself phase, meaning family events always made her nervous. She didn't need any added pressure. But then my phone buzzed with a text from my sister-in-law Rebecca. Don't bring that outsider to the engagement party. This is for real family only, not some random charity case you picked up to feel good about yourselves. I stared at the text in disbelief. Before I could move, Diana peered her head over the phone. That's about me? Her lower lip quivered. I tried to turn the phone, but she'd already seen it. I'm an outsider? She was now sniffling between words. A charity case? The tears started rolling. I'm not real family? She was almost hyperventilating. But everyone hugged me at Christmas. They do love you. I tried so hard to be good for you. She was sobbing now. I saved for 3 weeks for their present. I thought if I got them something nice. She couldn't finish. Am I going back to foster care? That destroyed me. I grabbed her into a ginormous mom hug. Listen to me. You are never going back. We are going to that party. Rebecca doesn't get to decide who's family. But she said I don't match. Then we'll make you match so perfectly she can't say a word. I wiped her tears. You want to wear that sparkly outfit you picked out? Her eyes lit up slightly. The one with rainbows? Every single rainbow. I texted my husband the screenshot. He came downstairs immediately and his jaw went rigid. He knelt by Diana. Rebecca said that about you? She nodded. Well, Rebecca's about to learn what happens when you mess with our daughter. The word daughter made Diana's eyes widen. Go get your sparkly outfit. We're adding to it. My phone rang. My sister Halsey, the girl getting married. Mom just forwarded me Rebecca's text. I'm livid. Put me on speaker. I did. Diana, honey, I need you at my party. In fact, I have a special job. You're going to help me with something secret. A smile appeared on Diana's face. Really? Really? And wear your best outfit. While Diana tried on her outfit, Rebecca texted again. Just confirming you got my message. I assume she won't be there. I didn't respond. My mother-in-law called, though. I saw Rebecca's texts. That woman married my son, but she's never been family like Diana is. Diana overheard. Grandma said I'm family? Baby, you've been family since day one. That's when my teenage nephew, Rebecca's own son, texted me. Mom's being weird about Diana. I'm wearing a matching sparkly bow tie tomorrow. Rebecca's own kids were rebelling. We soon went shopping for additions. Platform shoes with glitter, hair accessories that caught light like diamonds, a purse covered in rhinestones. Is this too much? Diana asked. It's perfect. Rebecca's going to lose her mind, I said. She smiled. Good. That evening, Diana made another gift. A massive handmade card covered in congratulations and stickers of everyone labeled family. Rebecca called my husband, but we let it go to voicemail. I'm not trying to be mean, but tomorrow is about Halsey, not your little charity project. I'm thinking of Halsey's happiness. The family group chat exploded when Halsey announced, everyone wear something sparkly tomorrow, even if it's just a sock to match Diana. Rebecca immediately texted the group, that's not necessary. Halsey responded, yes, it is. Diana practiced walking in her platforms. What if Rebecca blocks the door? Then we go through her, my husband said. But what if? No what ifs. You belong there. The next morning, Diana put on her entire outfit. Do I look like I belong? You look like you own the place. In the car, she clutched both presents. Mom, what if nobody else wore sparkles? They will. What if Rebecca says something mean? Then everyone will see exactly who she is. We arrived at the venue. Rebecca was stationed at the entrance like a guard. Her face went from confident to volcanic when she saw Diana in full sparkle glory. But before she could speak, Halsey burst through the doors in her dress. Diana, my special helper. She ran over, scooping Diana up. You look perfect. Come on, we have work to do. Rebecca's mouth opened, but Halsey was already whisking Diana inside. The entire family was there, all wearing something sparkly. Grandparents with glitter bow ties, aunts with glittered scarves, and Rebecca's own kids in some rhinestone accessories. The newest member of our family. Rebecca stood frozen as her own children ran to hug Diana. We love your outfit. You look like a disco ball. Her teenage son loudly announced, this is our cousin Diana, everyone. During Halsey's toast, she raised her glass. Before we celebrate, I need my special helper. She pulled Diana up beside her. This amazing girl joined our family 6 months ago and made it complete. Diana, will you be my flower girl? The room erupted. Diana's hands flew to her mouth. Rebecca's face was purple. When Diana gave Halsey the family card, Halsey almost teared up. It's perfect, Halsey announced. This is going in our wedding album. Rebecca tried to protest about the mess, but Halsey's fiancé said loudly, this is what family does. That's when Rebecca stood up, papers in hand, and started marching toward the center of the room. She cleared her throat aggressively. She waved a stack of papers above her head like some kind of victory flag, and the whole room went quiet. I have documentation right here that proves this child isn't legally part of our family. Her voice carried across the entire venue, and I felt Diana's small hand grab mine so hard her nails dug into my palm. Every single person in that room turned to stare at us, and I could feel Diana starting to shake beside me. The papers in Rebecca's hand were shaking too, but from excitement, not fear, as she kept waving them around. Before I could even open my mouth to respond, Halsey's fiancé stood up from his chair so fast it scraped against the floor. This is our engagement party, and you need to sit down right now." His voice had this commanding tone I'd never heard from him before, not in all the years I'd known him. Several guests started whispering and nodding in agreement, while others just stared in shock at what was happening. Rebecca's face got even redder, but she kept going anyway. "I'm just protecting this family from fraud because when that adoption falls through, we'll all look like fools." She started walking closer to where we were standing, and that's when Halsey moved. My sister practically ran across the room in her party dress, and before Rebecca could react, Halsey grabbed those papers right out of her hands. She didn't even look at them, just tore them straight in half and then in half again before dropping the pieces on the floor like confetti. The sound of paper ripping echoed through the silent room, and Rebecca's mouth fell open in complete shock. Diana started crying next to me, but when I looked down at her face, I realized they weren't sad tears at all. Halsey turned to face everyone in the room and announced loud and clear that Diana was family no matter what any piece of paper said. My mother-in-law stood up from her table and added that if Rebecca had a problem with that, she could leave right now because nobody wanted her negativity at this celebration. The room stayed silent for a moment, and then Rebecca's teenage son pushed back his chair and walked straight over to where Diana and I were standing. He put his arm around Diana's shoulders and looked directly at his mother. "You're embarrassing yourself, Mom, and you're embarrassing all of us too." His younger siblings got up and followed him, creating this protective circle around Diana, while their mother's face went from red to purple. The kids were all touching Diana's sparkly outfit and telling her it was okay while Rebecca stood there frozen with her mouth hanging open. That's when Bridget Morris, the venue manager, appeared from wherever she'd been watching this disaster unfold. She walked up to Rebecca with this professional smile that didn't reach her eyes and spoke quietly but firmly enough that those of us nearby could hear. "Ma'am, I need you to step outside and calm down, or I'll have to ask security to escort you out." Rebecca looked around the room desperately for someone to take her side, but nobody would even meet her eyes, not even her own husband who was staring at the floor like it was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. She spun around and started marching toward the exit but stopped at the door to shout one last thing. "You're all going to regret this when I call my friend at Child Services." Several people actually laughed out loud at that threat, which made her slam the door so hard the whole frame shook. Halsey grabbed the microphone from the DJ stand and apologized to everyone for the disruption, but said sometimes you have to stand up for what's right. Then she looked straight at Diana and asked her to come help cut the celebration cake early because she needed her special helper. Diana wiped her tears with the back of her hand and walked up to the front of the room with her head held high, her sparkly outfit catching every light in the place. The entire room burst into applause and people were actually standing up and clapping as Diana took her place next to Halsey at the cake table. While Diana was carefully helping serve slices of cake to the guests, my brother, who was Rebecca's husband, finally walked over to where I was standing. He couldn't look me in the eye and kept his voice low. I should have stopped her months ago when she started getting weird about Diana, but I kept thinking she'd get over it. He admitted he'd been trying to manage her jealousy, but hadn't realized how bad it had gotten until tonight. I wanted to be mad at him, but honestly I just felt sorry for him having to live with someone like that. The rest of the party turned into this amazing celebration of Diana, with everyone making extra effort to include her in everything. People were pulling her into photos left and right, and the photographer was making sure to get shots of Diana with every single family group. She was in pictures with the grandparents, with all the cousins, with Halsey and her fiancé, and even with some of the family friends who'd known us for years. The photographer kept saying things like, "One more with Diana in the middle," and "Let's get another one with our flower girl," which made Diana smile bigger each time. People were coming up to her all night telling her how pretty her outfit was and how excited they were for her to be in the wedding. Even people who usually kept to themselves were making a point to talk to Diana and include her in their conversations about school and hobbies and favorite movies. By the time we were getting ready to leave, Diana had chocolate cake on her sparkly dress, and her hair was messy from dancing, but she looked happier than I'd ever seen her. Just as we were gathering our things, a woman in a dark suit walked over and handed me a business card. Bridget Morris, the venue manager, leaned in close and told me she'd been watching everything unfold tonight. She'd already documented the whole incident with Rebecca and had security footage if we needed it for any legal stuff later. She mentioned she'd seen this kind of family drama before at other events and knew how ugly it could get. I tucked her card into my purse while Diana ran around saying goodbye to all the cousins. Outside in the parking lot, Halsey called us over to her car and popped the trunk. She pulled out a white box tied with a pink ribbon and handed it to Diana. Inside was the most beautiful flower girl dress I'd ever seen, all tulle and lace with tiny pearls sewn into the bodice. Diana's eyes went huge as she touched the fabric like it might disappear. Halsey told her it was made just for the most important member of the wedding party. Diana clutched that box against her chest the whole walk to our car. Once we got buckled in and started driving, Diana asked quietly if Rebecca would try to stop her from being in the wedding. My husband turned around in his seat and looked her straight in the eye. He promised her that nothing and nobody would keep her from being that flower girl, even if we had to get a restraining order. Diana nodded and hugged the dress box tighter. That night, she couldn't sleep from excitement about the dress. Around midnight, I found her sitting on her bed with the box open, just staring at it. We went downstairs and made hot chocolate with extra marshmallows. She pulled up Halsey's wedding Pinterest board on my phone and showed me all the different flower arrangements she liked. She grabbed a box of tissues and practiced tossing them like flower petals, trying different techniques. We stayed up until almost 2 in the morning looking at wedding stuff and practicing her flower girl walk. The next morning, my phone started buzzing with group texts before I even had coffee. Rebecca had sent a message to the whole family saying she was persecuted for trying to protect everyone from legal complications. My mother-in-law immediately responded that the only complication was Rebecca's behavior and lack of basic human decency. Then my sister-in-law's sister jumped in defending Rebecca, and suddenly the whole family chat turned into a war zone. I muted it after 20 messages. Halsey called me directly instead of texting. She was removing Rebecca from all wedding planning responsibilities immediately. She'd already called the venue and changed the approved visitor list so Rebecca couldn't make any changes. She was contacting every single vendor that afternoon to make sure Rebecca couldn't cancel anything out of spite. Password protection on everything. Diana overheard part of the call and asked if she could write Rebecca a letter, explaining how much the mean words had hurt her. We sat at the kitchen table and I helped her write it out carefully. She wrote about wanting to be loved and trying so hard to be good enough for the family. She wrote about saving her allowance for 3 weeks to buy nice presents. We decided to keep the letter instead of sending it, but just writing it seemed to help Diana feel better. That afternoon, the doorbell rang and my brother stood there alone. No Rebecca in sight. He had a gift bag in his hand and asked if he could see Diana. She came running when she heard his voice. He handed her the bag and inside was a photo album he'd made himself. Every page had pictures from the last 6 months since Diana joined our family. Christmas morning, her first day of school with us, family barbecues, movie nights on the couch. He'd written little captions under each one. He told Diana she was his kid's favorite cousin and always would be, no matter what his wife said or did. Diana hugged him so tight I thought she might never let go. After he left, my phone rang with Bridget Morris on the other end. She wanted to let us know that Rebecca had already tried calling the venue that morning to cancel the entire wedding. Luckily, the new authorization list blocked her from making any changes. Bridget suggested we should probably password protect all the vendor accounts immediately if we hadn't already. I texted Halsey right away and she said she was already on it. That night, Diana had her first real nightmare since the party. She woke up screaming that someone was taking her away from us. My husband and I both ran to her room and found her tangled in her sheets, tears streaming down her face. We all piled into her bed together, making a sandwich with Diana in the middle. My husband started telling her stories about when he was little and got scared of thunderstorms. He talked about how his parents would let him sleep in their bed and tell him funny stories until he felt safe again. Diana's breathing slowly returned to normal as she listened. We stayed there all night, the three of us squished together in her twin bed, nobody wanting to leave. The next morning, my phone rang while Diana was eating cereal, and the caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. A woman's voice introduced herself as Nadia Abbott from Child Protective Services, and my stomach dropped to the floor. She explained someone had made a complaint about our fitness as parents, and she needed to schedule a routine home visit. Her voice was calm, and she assured me these vindictive reports happen all the time, and rarely amount to anything when they're unfounded. I asked who made the complaint, but she couldn't tell me, though we both knew it was Rebecca. Diana looked up from her bowl and asked who was on the phone. I told her it was just someone about paperwork, and she went back to eating. Nadia scheduled the visit for next week and said not to worry too much about it. After hanging up, I grabbed a notebook from the kitchen drawer and started writing everything down. The texts from Rebecca, the engagement party incident, her trying to cancel the wedding venue, every single thing I could remember. Diana wandered over and saw me writing furiously. "Am I causing too much trouble for you?" she asked in a small voice. I pulled her into my lap and told her she was the best thing that ever happened to our family. My husband came in and I showed him my notes while Diana went to get dressed. He added more details I'd forgotten and suggested we print out all the text messages too. That afternoon, we sat Diana down for a family meeting at the kitchen table. My husband explained that sometimes families have members who make bad choices, but that doesn't break the real bonds between people who love each other. He used this metaphor about a garden where sometimes you have to pull out weeds to help the flowers grow stronger. Diana nodded and said Rebecca was like a really big weed. We all laughed at that. 2 days later, Halsey showed up at our door with a woman carrying garment bags and a tackle box full of sewing supplies. "Surprise flower girl fitting," she announced, and Diana's face lit up completely. They turned our living room into a dressing room with mirrors propped against the wall and music playing from Halsey's phone. The wedding planner helped Diana into this beautiful white dress with purple ribbon around the waist. Diana stood on a chair while the woman pinned the hem, and she kept twirling to watch the skirt float out. Halsey took about 100 photos, and Diana practiced her flower petal throwing technique. They had fancy cookies and juice boxes, and made it feel like a real party. That evening, Diana's phone buzzed with notifications, and she showed me her screen excitedly. Rebecca's kids had added her to a group chat called Cousin Squad, with a note that said, "No mean moms allowed." Her teenage nephew sent funny videos of cats falling off things, and his younger siblings sent her drawings they made at the school. Diana spent an hour sending them sparkly stickers and emoji responses. The day of Nadia's visit arrived, and I'd cleaned the house 3 times even though it was already spotless. Diana showed Nadia her room right away, pointing out all the family photos covering her dresser and the wall of drawings from her cousins. Nadia seemed charmed by how Diana had decorated everything with rainbows and sparkles. She asked Diana about school and friends, and Diana told her about her teacher and the girl who sits next to her in class. Nadia took notes, but she was smiling the whole time. Then Nadia interviewed each of us separately in the living room, while the others waited in the kitchen. Diana went first, and I could hear her talking excitedly about the engagement party, but focusing on how everyone wore sparkles to match her outfit. When it was my turn, Nadia said Diana seemed remarkably well-adjusted despite the recent stress. She interviewed my husband last, and then gathered us all together to say she'd be closing the case as unfounded. Diana asked if that meant she was staying with us forever, and Nadia said absolutely. The next day, my mother-in-law called and announced she was taking her girls out for a special day. She picked up Diana, Halsey, and me in her car, making a point of not inviting Rebecca. We went to the nail salon where Diana picked the sparkliest polish they had, of course, this silver glitter that caught the light from every angle. While our nails dried, we planned wedding details, and Diana suggested having sparklers for everyone to hold during the first dance. My mother-in-law said that was brilliant, and Halsey immediately added it to her list. Diana felt so included and important, showing off her nails to everyone who would look. 3 days later, my phone rang, and a man introduced himself as Oswald Greer, a professional mediator. He explained my brother had convinced Rebecca to try mediation before the wedding to establish some boundaries. I didn't want to do it, but my husband said maybe it would help keep the actual wedding day peaceful. We agreed to meet the following week. Oswald sent over some paperwork about the process and what to expect. That night, Diana found the mediation papers on the counter and asked what they were for. When we explained that we were going to talk to someone about Rebecca's behavior, Diana asked if she could write down things she wanted to say. We sat at the dining room table with paper and colored pens. Diana wrote, "I just wanted to be loved" at the top of the page in purple ink. Then she added, "I tried so hard to be good enough," and my heart cracked reading those words. She made a whole list including, "I saved my money for presents," and "I practice being quiet so I don't bother anyone," and "I do my homework without being asked." Each line made me want to drive to Rebecca's house and shake her for making this sweet kid feel like she had to earn basic human kindness. The day of mediation came faster than I wanted, and we dropped Diana at my mom's house before heading to Oswald's office downtown. The building had that weird smell all office buildings have, like old carpet and coffee, and my hands were sweating as we rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. Rebecca was already there in the waiting room with my brother, sitting as far apart as 2 people could while still being on the same couch. She looked up when we walked in and immediately started to say something, but my brother grabbed her arm and shook his head. Oswald opened his office door right at 10 o'clock. This older guy with gray hair and glasses who looked like he'd seen every type of family drama possible. He had us sit in a circle of chairs and explained the rules while Rebecca tapped her foot against the carpet. So hard I thought she might wear a hole in it. She couldn't even wait for him to finish before pulling out a folder and waving it around, saying she had proof Diana wasn't legally ours yet, but Oswald just held up his hand and told her to put the papers away, because this wasn't about legal status. I watched her face turn red as she shoved the folder back in her purse, muttering something I couldn't hear. When it was my turn to talk, I explained how Diana had been crying herself to sleep, waking up with nightmares about being sent back to foster care, asking every morning if she was still allowed to stay with us. My voice cracked when I described finding her packing her things in a garbage bag she'd hidden under her bed, just in case we changed our minds about keeping her. Rebecca's face went from defensive to uncomfortable, shifting in her chair and looking at the wall instead of at me. She tried to interrupt twice, but Oswald reminded her about the no interrupting rule, and she crossed her arms so tight I thought she might cut off her own circulation. When she finally got her turn, she started talking about inheritance issues and legal complications, how she was just being practical and thinking ahead. Oswald leaned forward and asked her to explain why she used words like outsider and charity case if her concerns were purely legal, and she opened and closed her mouth like a fish trying to breathe air. My brother, who'd been silent this whole time, suddenly stood up and started pacing, saying he was tired of pretending everything was fine when everyone could see Rebecca was jealous of the attention Diana got. He said their own kids loved Diana, talked about her constantly, and he wasn't going to let his wife's insecurity destroy their relationships with the rest of the family. Rebecca's eyes filled with tears, and she started yelling that nobody understood what it was like to watch her kids get pushed aside for the new special grandchild who got extra everything just for existing. She said Diana got special dinners, special shopping trips, special attention at every family event while her kids just got regular treatment like they didn't matter anymore. It was the first honest thing she'd said in months, even though it didn't excuse what she'd done. The door opened and Halsey walked in, still in her work clothes, and sat down next to me without saying anything at first. She listened to Rebecca's sob story for about 30 seconds before standing up and laying out exactly how things were going to be from now on. Rebecca could come to the wedding as a regular guest. She had to apologize to Diana in person before the ceremony, and if she made even one negative comment, she'd be removed by security immediately. Rebecca's mouth fell open, but Halsey wasn't done, adding that she'd already talked to the venue about having someone stationed near Rebecca's table just in case. Oswald pulled out a laptop and started typing up what he called a family behavior agreement, reading each point out loud while Rebecca got quieter and quieter. The agreement included specific rules about no negative comments about Diana, no attempts to exclude her from family events, no discussing her adoption status with anyone, and mandatory attendance at 3 family therapy sessions. Rebecca signed it with shaking hands, muttering that she felt like a criminal in her own family, but nobody responded to that because we were all too tired of her drama. After we left the building, we picked up Diana and took her for ice cream at her favorite place, the one with 31 flavors where she always got cotton candy with rainbow sprinkles. We explained that Aunt Rebecca had agreed to be nicer and might even apologize at the wedding, and Diana just shrugged and said she'd be polite if it happened, but she didn't need an apology to be happy because she had us, and that was enough. 2 weeks later, the wedding rehearsal finally arrived, and we got to the church early, so Diana could practice walking down the aisle without tripping in her fancy shoes. Rebecca showed up right on time, gave Diana this stiff little nod like she was acknowledging a stranger at the grocery store, then went to sit in the back row. Diana didn't even notice because she was too busy counting her steps and practicing her petal throwing technique with invisible flowers. The rehearsal dinner was at this Italian place with checkered tablecloths and breadsticks Diana couldn't stop eating, and the seating chart had us at the head table with Diana between my husband and me, while Rebecca sat at the far end with some cousins. Halfway through dinner, the teenage nephew stood up with his water glass and made this whole speech about how family isn't about blood or papers, but about choosing to love people, and he looked right at Diana the entire time while his mom stared at her pasta, like it was the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. The wedding morning came faster than expected, and Diana was already bouncing on our bed at 5 a.m., too excited to sleep another minute. She kept asking if it was time to get ready yet, while my husband groaned and pulled a pillow over his head, but there was no containing her energy. We got up and started doing her hair in these special braids my mother-in-law had taught me, weaving baby's breath flowers through each section, while Diana sat as still as she could manage, which wasn't very still at all. She kept reaching up to touch the flowers and asking if they were staying in place, then jumping up to check herself in the mirror every few minutes. When we finally got all the braids secured and added her glitter shoes from the engagement party, she spun around declaring herself the sparkliest flower girl ever, and honestly, she wasn't wrong. The venue was already buzzing with activity when we arrived, bridesmaids running around with curling irons and makeup brushes while Halsey sat in the center getting her hair done. Diana immediately ran to show her the flower braids, and Halsey made such a big fuss about how perfect they looked that Diana practically glowed. That's when Rebecca walked into the dressing room carrying a garment bag, and everyone got quiet for a second. She walked straight to Diana, cleared her throat, and said she was wrong about what she'd said before, and that Diana belonged in the family. Diana just looked at her for a moment, said okay in this tiny voice, then went right back to practicing with her flower basket like nothing had happened. Rebecca stood there for another awkward moment before walking to the far corner of the room to hang up her dress. The ceremony started right on time with Diana standing at the back of the aisle clutching her basket so tight her knuckles were white. When the music changed for her entrance, she took this huge breath and started walking, tossing petals with such concentration on her face that several guests started smiling. She kept perfect time with the music, scattering rose petals in these deliberate little handfuls, beaming bigger with each step she took. When she reached the altar, Halsey bent down to give her this massive hug before Diana took her special seat in the front row right between us, still clutching her empty basket like a trophy. During the vows, she kept looking up at Halsey with these huge eyes, mouthing along with some of the words she'd memorized from rehearsal. The reception hall was decorated with twinkle lights and flowers everywhere, and Diana spent the first 20 minutes just spinning in circles watching her dress float out around her. Rebecca found a table in the back corner and pretty much stayed there, but her kids immediately found Diana and dragged her onto the dance floor. They taught her this silly dance where you pretend to be different animals, and soon half the kids at the wedding were doing the chicken walk and frog hops while the adults took videos. Diana was right in the middle of the group, laughing so hard she could barely stand up straight during the monkey moves. When Halsey announced she was doing the bouquet toss, she made sure Diana was standing in just the right spot, practically placing her there with her hands on Diana's shoulders. Halsey turned around and launched those flowers straight back in a perfect arc that landed right in Diana's arms. Diana held them above her head like she'd just won the Olympics, while the photographer snapped picture after picture of her victory pose. The father-daughter dance started with Halsey and her dad swaying to some old song, but halfway through my husband stood up and held his hand out to Diana. She looked confused for a second until he led her onto the floor, and then Halsey's dad gestured for all three of them to dance together. Diana stood on my husband's feet while they moved in this little circle, and I noticed my mother-in-law wiping her eyes with a tissue. Even Rebecca watched from her corner table without saying anything, just staring at the three of them moving together. The DJ grabbed the microphone and announced a special cousin dance that the teenage nephew had requested, and suddenly every kid under 16 was running onto the dance floor. They formed this massive circle with Diana right in the center, all of them doing the Cupid shuffle and the cha-cha slide, while Diana's flower girl dress spun and twirled. She was laughing and trying to keep up with all the moves, her flower crown sliding sideways but staying on somehow. Near the end of the night, my mother-in-law stood up and clinked her glass for attention, even though nobody had asked her to make a speech. She talked about how family wasn't about blood or paperwork, but about choosing to love people, and she looked right at Diana when she said the newest members often become the most cherished ones. Diana was sitting on my lap by then, getting sleepy but still clutching her caught bouquet, and she gave my mother-in-law this tiny wave that made everyone go, "Aw." Rebecca got up and left without saying goodbye to anyone, just grabbed her purse and walked out, but her husband and kids stayed until the very end. Her husband pulled me aside while we were stacking chairs and said he was insisting on marriage counseling because he wouldn't let Rebecca's issues poison their children's relationships with their cousin. The cleanup was almost done when Diana finally crashed, falling asleep in my husband's arms with her bouquet still pressed against her chest, and her flower crown tilted over one eye. Halsey came over with her wedding jacket and draped it over Diana like a blanket, whispering that Diana had made the wedding perfect, just by being herself. The next week, our lawyer called with the news we'd been waiting for since the wedding. Diana's adoption finalization was scheduled for next month at the courthouse downtown. Diana jumped up and down in the kitchen when we told her, asking if she could wear her flower girl dress to court. She wanted another party with cake and decorations and all the cousins there again. We promised her the biggest celebration our backyard had ever seen. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca for the first time since the wedding. She wrote that she'd like to attend the adoption celebration if we were having one, and she'd bring an appropriate gift this time. My husband read it over my shoulder and shrugged, saying it was progress, even if things would never be warm between us. We decided that was enough for now, and I texted back a simple yes with the date and time. Diana started sleeping through the night again after that. No more waking up crying about being sent away. She spent hours arranging the wedding photos on her bedroom walls, using pushpins to create a whole collage above her bed. The ones with all her cousins dancing went right in the center where she could see them first thing every morning. She labeled each photo with a marker, writing things like best day ever and my real family in her careful handwriting. The weeks passed quickly with Diana counting down on the calendar with star stickers. The morning of the adoption finally arrived and we got to the courthouse early, but the parking lot was already filling up. My mother-in-law had organized a whole caravan of family members, and they all showed up wearing their best clothes. Even Rebecca came, sitting quietly in the back row of the courtroom with her husband and kids. Diana wore a new dress we'd bought special for the occasion, purple with silver sparkles because of course it had sparkles. When the judge called our case, Diana walked up holding both our hands so tight I thought she'd cut off circulation. The judge asked Diana if she wanted to be adopted, and she practically shouted yes before he even finished the question. He smiled and signed the papers, declaring Diana officially our daughter, and she launched herself into our arms, crying those happy tears that make your whole chest tight. The courtroom erupted in cheers, and even the bailiff was wiping his eyes. We drove home in a parade of honking cars with Diana clutching her adoption certificate like it might disappear. The backyard was already set up with tables and balloons when we arrived, my sister having snuck over during court to arrange everything. Diana ran straight to the cousin squad, who had made a huge banner that said, "Welcome home, Diana," with glitter glue and handprints. During the party, Rebecca approached with a wrapped package, handing it to Diana without making eye contact. Diana unwrapped it carefully to find a framed family tree artwork, with Diana's name prominently displayed right alongside everyone else's. She thanked Rebecca politely before running off to show her cousins, leaving Rebecca standing there watching her go. 6 months passed in what felt like days, Diana so busy with school plays and sleepovers that the engagement party drama became a distant memory. She mentioned Rebecca sometimes, but without the fear or anger from before, just as someone who existed at the edges of our family gatherings. Halsey called one afternoon asking if Diana could help plan her first anniversary party since she'd been such a good helper at the wedding. Diana immediately grabbed my laptop and started a Pinterest board called Sparkly Anniversary Ideas before Halsey even finished explaining. She spent the next 3 hours pinning glittery centerpieces and rainbow decorations, calling Halsey every few minutes with new ideas. That Sunday at our regular family dinner, I watched Diana sitting between her cousins, stealing bites off their plates and laughing at their jokes. Rebecca sat at the other end making small talk about the weather with my mother-in-law, both of them trying to keep things civil. Diana didn't even notice Rebecca watching her, too busy arm wrestling with the teenage nephew who let her win every time. Looking at her now, confident and secure in her place at the table, I realized something had shifted in all of us. Diana hadn't just joined our family by filling an empty space we didn't know existed. She'd shown us what actually mattered by forcing us to choose between keeping peace and protecting someone we loved. The whole family had chosen her that day at the engagement party and kept choosing her every day since. Even Rebecca had learned to accept what she couldn't change, sitting at our table making awkward conversation but still showing up. Diana helped us become the kind of family that stands up for each other, that chooses love over comfort, that makes space for everyone even when it's hard. Well, that's it. You survived another one of my ramblings. If you somehow enjoyed it, hit subscribe, because clearly, you make questionable choices.